It Chapter 2, the highly anticipated, short awaited sequel to the critically acclaimed 2017 horror movie adaptation of Stephen King's novel masterpiece of the same name, directed once again by Andy Muschietti and starring James McAvoy, Jessica Chastain, and Bill Hader. Now, straight off the bat, I'm going to tell you that I liked it. I liked it a lot. I enjoyed it very much during and after my viewing, and now a couple of days later, while some criticisms may have come to mind and arisen, I'm still mostly on the same page. Fair warning, once more, this is a spoiler review, not too heavy on the spoilers, but I'm going to reveal some stuff. And I just want to say that the majority of the complaints and criticisms I've now heard about this film sound like bullshit to me. I don't think I agreed with any of them, maybe the odd one, but honestly, I couldn't believe some of the stuff I was hearing. So the casting for this film was impeccable. All right, it was so unbelievably good that I had to actually check whether any of the adult actors were actually related to the kids they were playing because they just nailed it. That was by far the best attribute of the film for me, for sure. The casting, the performances were fantastic, start to finish. I have to say that in particular, Richie, Bill, Ben were really great. They were really great, but I have to give the winner to James Ransoni as Eddie. I mean, wow. That was just insane. He was perfect. Every mannerism and every line delivery was spot on. There's a moment in which he's too scared to help and he just freezes up in the corner. And that's the kind of moment, especially in a horror film, that would just really piss me off. I'd just be like, I hate seeing scenes like this. Just fucking do something, you know? But it didn't piss me off at all. I wasn't annoyed by it. I was just sympathetic. It was that perfectly acted, and I really felt for it. It was totally gutted by his death, despite seeing it come in. And it's just that when you watch a horror film, there's just this classic shot, like you can just tell just by the framing that someone's about to get stabbed in the back or something, and it was one of them. Now, McAvoy and Chastain aren't exactly going to be surprising anyone with their great performances. They easily and successfully captured their young counterparts' idiosyncrasies and mannerisms. But Bill Hader, I feel, has really shown the world now his dramatic talent. Now, don't get me wrong, he's great in Barry and indie flicks like The Skeleton Twins. And even in this, he's playing the comedian, but that's why it worked so well for me. And I just loved watching him try to cover up his feelings with jokes, all of which landed for me personally, I think. And this was perfectly captured at the end of the film when his character, Richie, has been affected most of all and has a breakdown, basically. Isaiah Mustafa. What a beautiful name. That's an amazing name. Isaiah Mustafa. Sorry if I'm butchering that. Really nailed the pitiful and forlornness of Mike, and I felt so horrible knowing that he was stuck there all this time with the memories, and he really managed to give a sense of agency and understanding to the major driving force, an exposition dumping character of Mike. Andy Bean, while only in the film briefly, he was great. He looked just like Stanley and gave a really great performance in this scene on the phone with Mike at the start of the film. Jay Ryan plays the older Ben Hanscom, and even though he really captured Ben's innocence and knowledge of his place in the world, right? Even though he's now super hot and rich, he thinks he isn't good enough still. And I just felt like the sweet, lovely fat kid never left the room. The looks of silent despair and envy when he sees Bev and Bill talking, it was heartbreaking. Also, I'll give a shout out to the supporting actors for keeping the performance consistent, And I really enjoyed Stephen King's cameo. I thought it was really funny and well placed in the film. Now, Pennywise, once again, was great, just great. Played to perfection once again by Bill Skarsgård, a.k.a. the Ledger to Curry's Nicholson. Yeah, I said it. And I will admit that the novelty had diminished a little from the first film, and by the end of this one, he wasn't as scary as before. But that's always going to happen, let's be honest. It's just a sequel, what's the word? Fucking fatigue, come on, think of words here. But it was never going to live up to the first, let's be honest. But the scenes with him were all great, and he still nails the performance for me. There was a little more variety to his character this time, like the opening scene and then the scene under the bleachers with the little girl felt completely different from each other. And it, of course, would act differently toward grown men and a little girl. The opening scene where the gay guy sees Pennywise holding his boyfriend and then just takes a huge bite out of him. He's like a fucking shark, dude. Just takes a huge chunk out of him. It was awesome. Really awesome. Great reintroduction to the character. Skarsgård just plays him like so out of this world. Like there's barely any of this crazy clown time feel to him. He literally just feels like a demon in a clown getup. It's perfect. I respect Tim Curry's performance so much; it's legendary. But to me, he's just like a scary clown from New York or something. Like, hey kids, I'm gonna kill you. You know what I mean? Whereas Pennywise, in both appearance and voice, just is entirely unique. What a great villain. I can imagine some people not being intimidated by his final form, and I wasn't particularly, to be honest. But if I was one of those characters in that scene, then fuck yeah, I'd be scared. You know what I mean? I was also a little disappointed with the origin they gave him too. Like, I understand not fully going into detail of the book and leaving out Maturin, who, for those who don't know, is a massive ancient cosmic turtle and one of the guardians of the Dark Tower. But the idea that it is just basically an alien that landed here is a tad too derivative for me, and a bit too plain. Like, it worked for King Ghidorah, but not for Pennywise. But despite that, Skarsgård's Pennywise is easily one of the best horror villains of all time for me. Like, he's definitely up there. I felt there was a lot more jump scares in this one. But they all worked well, and the audience, I mean, I'll be honest, Hong Kong. I live in Hong Kong, and the audience was mostly kids. Like, I couldn't believe how many kids were allowed to even watch this film. I think the film's like a 12A over here. It's crazy. And like, these people were jumping out of the seats, not just the kids, the adults too, including me and my girlfriend a little bit. One guy literally screamed like in the cinema. It was either the old lady scene with Bev or the little girl in the bleachers moment. But either way, thank you, film, for that. That was hilarious. I love that. Despite already seeing the old lady scene from the trailer, that was actually one of my favourite scenes. Like, when she came stomping out of the kitchen and was hilarious and terrifying. It was really cool. And despite having never seen the film Mama with Jessica Chastain, and not knowing that it was actually the same director till after, when I was getting the details for this review, I thought to myself, I imagine that's, like in the cinema, I was like, I imagine that's what Mama looked like from what I heard. And then I looked it up, and it kind of did. So from his three movies, I would stab a guess that scary-ass, crazy, tall-looking women are one of Machete's traits. So we'll see if that appears again in the future. 169 minutes. I had absolutely no idea the film was that long, either going into it or during or even after when I walked out. I had no idea. It was only when I was looking it up on IMDb did I see the runtime, and I honestly could not believe it. I felt like it was 2 hours, 2 hours 10 max, like about the same as the first one. Which only tells me that A, I enjoyed it, and B, the pacing was great, and I didn't feel the film was bloated at all. I know some people I looked at one review that said it was both over bloated and skimpy, and I was like, I disagree completely. There was always something to look at, and there's always something to pay attention to. Another complaint I don't agree with, it was with the artifact storyline in the middle of the film. Like, apparently people complaining it's too episodic and broken up, and again, that didn't bother me at all. They did the same thing in the first movie and the book. Pennywise terrifies each character individually for maximum effect, and I enjoyed each vignette and watched them face their fears and the past that they'd ran away from, and I really enjoyed that. It was the same during the final finale when fighting Pennywise. Like, he attacks each of their fears once more, and I didn't find that repetitive. And I won't complain about that no more than I would complain about chest bursting in an Alien movie. That's just one of the things you're going to get. I think the first half of the movie is the better half, though, about a third or halfway through. Like, I turned to my girlfriend and whispered, you know what, I think this is actually the better movie. Because so far I was so impressed, and I just thought it was pretty flawless. But admittedly, it does get a little looser as we gear up for the final act. I really enjoyed the flashbacks to the kids, particularly the scenes we never saw before, and I think partly because I wasn't really expecting them to be in it as much as they were. Like, I mean, the first movie didn't exactly flash forward to when they were adults, so I thought they were really just going to split up the timeline over the two films. But combining both the young and adult versions of the characters, it made the film feel a lot deeper and more satisfying and just overall entertaining in general, to be honest. I thought the movie was quite gorgeous in parts. Like, there's some really stunning shots and cinematography and choreography as well. Muschietti made great use of bringing things into light from darkness. There was a lot of that in the film. playing on people's individual and specific fears is surely the most terrifying thing you can do, right? Rather than just have a generic monster or a big shark, you know, who wouldn't be who wouldn't be afraid of a big fucking shark, you know? The clown is an infamous fear by itself, but not everyone is afraid of clowns, and the fact that it can make his victims hallucinate their worst nightmares, I feel, is something everyone can relate to. Oh, excuse me. And even if what you're seeing doesn't scare you personally, it's still, you can still empathise with it. It's a great way to keep the horror elements fresh. Anyway, so it's not just Pennywise popping out of places, you know. Having said that, the fortune cookie scene was a great scene. It's probably my favourite scene of the whole film. We know, like, we the audience know that Stanley is dead, and we know that the characters are going to learn this at some point. But what a great way to both reveal this information to characters and to reintroduce the Losers Club to its power, Pennywise's power, as well as give a varied horror scene with something to gross out or put anyone off. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm as desensitized as they come, but anyone who can see the shit they did and not feel the tiniest bit uncomfortable is probably a psycho, let's be honest. Yes, I'm aware that it's not actually happening in real life or in the film itself in this case, but with that attitude, like, why would you watch films in the first place? You know what I mean? Like, oh, Forrest Gump, what a beautiful film. Nah, it's not real. Oh, wow, that was an exciting action scene, wasn't it? Yeah, but it's not real. Anyway, I digress. There were lots of jokes in the film too, but never once did I feel that they took away from the tone of the movie, you know. Instead, it kept up the entertainment factor for me. There were some really good transitions as well, especially, oh man, there was this transition at the start where it goes from the stars outside of, I think it's Ben's house. The camera pans up to the stars and then zooms in, and then the stars become missing puzzle pieces as Stanley's doing a puzzle on his glass table. That really stood out to me instantly. It's probably one of the best transitions I've seen all decade. It was very inventive and just flawlessly executed. Once again, Benjamin Wallfish's score was, I think I pronounced it, Wallfish. It's top-notch, just a top-notch score, right? He took the themes he composed for the first movie, which were already great, and then added to them. The main opening score of the previous movie was every 27 years, and then Chapter 2 opens with 27 years later. Whereas the former track began with like a haunting sounds of kids chanting, kind of a Elm Street vibe. The latter dives right into the piano segment and then is swept up by some almost like Burton/Elfman collaboration style woodwind and brass. It was really nice. Wallfish scored the whole film consistently, you know, with a tone of tragedy and haunting. A lot of songs start with like floaty, beautiful vibes that remind me of childhood, memory and nostalgia, only to then develop into a much more frightening and upsetting climax. Occasionally, though, Wallfish would give us a break with some uninterrupted, delightful scoring. Losers Reunited was a lovely score that played during the Chinese restaurant scene and gave us a real sense of joy, you know, only to then give us a nails on a chalkboard string work in Fortune Cookies, the next song. Wallfish helps pace the film really well, giving us much needed moments of respite. And a sense of urgency, like it goes from respite to a sense of urgency and intensity, and then delivering moments of pure fright in tracks like Bauer's Attack or Mrs. Kirsch. That reminds me of classics like the Planet Suite by Holst. All the while keeping a consistent timbre of mystery, nostalgia, and distortion. I love the mix of the main theme with the classic carnival sounds out of tune, like accordion kind of music in Dirty Little Secret when Pennywise is taunting Richie. And there's some really beautiful tracks in there, including Nothing Lasts Forever, Goodbye, I Swear, Bill, and then the ending piece, Stan's Letter, really drove home the themes of winning at a cost and like freedom from fear. And I'm not sure a horror movie has ever won Best Original Score. Depends if you count Jaws as a horror movie. But this is honestly, to me, this is award-worthy scoring, man. It was beautiful. It was so good. And this is the kind of score you would find in a Best Picture nominated film for sure. Now, I paid no heed to the reviews before going to see it, as I like to go into a movie as blind and with little preconception as I can if it's something I really want to watch. But I am aware there was a general consensus of it's good, but not as good as the first. And that's fine. I can definitely understand that point of view, and that was, to be honest, what I always expected. But I'm kind of on the fence. Like, for the first half of the movie, and when I walked out, my missus and I were discussing which we thought was better, and we decided it was it's like an Infinity War Endgame situation, right? In that the first is the Titan movie that really shook things up, and then the second had an impossible task of living up to it. And while for some it did, it got a bit messy with its attempt to make it more epic. Yet when the second film is better, it's much better. I think Chapter 1 is a superior horror film and had the better ending, but I felt like Chapter 2 was just better made and there was more going on. I don't know. I'm still on the fence about it. The finale was better in Chapter 1 also. I'll give you that. But again, I can't hold that against the film too much because the book ending is just fucking nuts. And in about 6 months to a year, I'll probably watch them both back to back and see how that works. But what I loved about Chapter 2 is that I feel the film would work better if you haven't seen Chapter 1 in a while, making you empathise more with the themes and characters' lack of / blurred memory, which is a really cool factor. Now, of course, the fucking SJW, LGBTQ, far left crowd have something to complain about with this movie because they're a bunch of fucking pansies, right? These people are insane and just will never be happy. They're constantly alterating their own rules and moving the goalposts, so to speak, right? They're complaining about the homophobic attack at the beginning, right? Despite the fact that the movie clearly makes it look like a terrible thing only a horrible person would do, you know? And at first I didn't really buy that this kind of attack would happen in 2019 anyway, but then I quickly realised why it was important to keep it in, right? Not only is it accurate to the source material, the first chapter of the novel dealing with the aftermath of this awful hate crime, but it's also contextualised within the story to show the audience that the town of Derry hasn't progressed and that nasty, aggressive behaviour is still prevalent due to the evil force of it, okay? There's no politics or agenda behind this scene. I mean, maybe there is, but if there is, it's an LGBTQ positive one, right? And they should be complimenting the filmmakers for its no-hold-bars depiction of a hate crime and how horrible it is, and thanking them for opening people's eyes and making people feel bad for ever even having thoughts of such hate and violence. And if the filmmakers did decide to change the couple to a hetero couple, right, you just know that these same people would then complain about the lack of representation and straight washing, right? Like, how dare you show us a homophobic charge assault? How dare you change a gay couple to a hetero couple? Like, these dickheads can fuck right off, right? There is just no pleasing these fools, and I urge you to ignore any critique they have of the movie before you watch, or even worse, after you watch, you know? If you enjoyed it, don't let them change your mind, please. All right. So in closing, right now I'm inclined to say that both chapters of it were as good as each other for different reasons, which, you know, might be the unpopular opinion right now, but I don't care. I have my own experiences and judgments of what I think makes a film good. Like I said, I think Chapter 1 is the better horror film, but I was much more interested in these characters as adults and yet still loved the flashbacks and how they piece the film together. I honestly think It 1 and 2 have got to be some of the, if not these, definitely some of the best mainstream Hollywood horror movies of the decade, maybe the century so far. Like, the majority of horror films don't come close to this caliber of filmmaking technique, character exploration, and emotional resonance, as well as a top-notch villain, far more in line with the likes of, you know, Freddy Krueger and the Creeper, rather than just your typical modern horror fucking scary face ghost demon. I'm looking at you, Conjuring. And even the score is, like I said, top-notch, you know. Anyway, so that's my review of It Chapter 2. Let me know what you thought. Am I super wrong about the film? Tell me why. Do you agree with me? Tell me why. Yeah, like and subscribe and tell me what you thought. Have a good day, guys.